Okay, let's get back to Labor's renewables green dream. And while they scoff at the cost of nuclear, we learnt last week that the renewables transition will cost $600 billion. That's 5 times what Labor has been telling us. The issue was explored last night in Chris Uhlmann's doco, The Real Cost of Net Zero. And if you didn't get the chance to watch it live, then you can catch up on our website, skynews.com.au. But here's some of the crucial information that Chris shared with us.
Turning unreliable generation into instantly available power means weather-dependent generators have to be hooked up to a complex and expensive life support system the old grid didn't need. It's what the boffins call firming.
So powered by the sun and the wind, firmed up with batteries and pumped hydro.
And each of these steps adds costs to the system.
Yeah, let's bring in energy expert Matt Rennie from Rennie Advisory, joining us live from Brisbane. Thanks for joining us again, Matt. That was a good little explainer of how you need to firm up renewables. And then on top of that, of course, which is a very expensive and complex mechanism, you have to add an enormous amount of transmission to link it all up. And this all adds to the cost. Is it any wonder that now we're now talking about a $600 billion transition?
I think that's right, Chris. I mean, if it was being done on time and at the scale that was necessary, it would be that. I suspect we're going to need a little bit more than that as we look to firm up even beyond that. The thesis, the AEMO thesis, has been that solar and renewables and hydro with batteries could get us there, but I think we're all admitting now that we're probably going to struggle in the 2030 period.
Yeah, this is what you've been saying for a long while. We've had this rhetoric from the government that it's all going to happen, it's all rolling out, we're all on track. And even though you're largely supportive of their model, you're saying we're a long way short. And because we're a long way short, that means keeping gas, certainly keeping coal on longer and maybe going to even more gas than we've got at the moment?
Oh, I think that's exactly right. I mean, a few years ago, we were saying that solar, renewables and batteries could do the entire thing. We've now, about a year ago, we're now talking about a role for household batteries and solar that are going to meet this gap. And now the rhetoric is beginning to shift towards gas peaking and firming, and now to gas baseload. I think, all of these types of generation are reflective of the fact that I think most of us are realising that there's a yawning gap emerging and it needs to be filled by something. And I'm not sure that people know exactly what just yet.
A lot of people are talking about gas. Gas needs to be get us there. And here's what Chris Uhlmann had to say about gas last night.
The inconvenient truth is the new system can't deliver reliable power without gas.
Look, gas is the ultimate backstop for reliability for a net zero power system.
And not just a little bit of gas, 15 gigawatts, enough power to run 15 million homes through 2050 and beyond. So gas is not the backup, it's the backbone of a weather-dependent grid which simply will not function as a reliable electricity system without it. Gas will be essential to cover the daily fluctuations in wind and solar generation, the morning and evening hours of peak demand, and the longer, still dark nights.
Yeah, that's the importance of gas. But one of the complications here, Matt, is if you need to have that gas generation as a backup, you need cheap gas. Now, to get cheap gas, you've got to exploit a lot of gas. You've got to use a lot of it. And you've got to know you're going to use it. They can't buy the gas on long-term contracts and then the wind blows for 3 months and they don't get to burn any of it.
No, and there's a lot of issues in the notion of gas being a baseload fuel. The first is price. I mean, we don't have to go very far back to remember that only 2 years ago there were gas price caps because gas was so expensive. Secondly, the notion of there being 15 gigawatts of gas in the mid-2030s was nowhere near AEMO's ISP 2 years ago. This is very much a recent phenomena caused by delays. But lastly, when we're looking at a baseload solution, if we're looking at gas as the baseload solution, I'm not sure that from an environmental perspective it's better than coal. but it's certainly not what was promised.
So doesn't all the logic point us to the fact that if you want baseload and you need baseload, and it seems like we do need baseload, you're better to look to nuclear, and even if that takes us 10 to 20 years, we can get there with gas and coal in the interim, but you end up with a system that has nuclear baseload, a lot of renewables, and probably still some gas peaking.
I think I think conventional thought is moving very quickly that way. I mean, nuclear isn't going to help us in the 2030s. I think we're going to need to find a solution for that, and it's most likely going to be running coal for longer and keeping gas on. But, if there's two questions on nuclear, is there room for it in the stack? Well, yes, we're moving from 60 gigawatts to 300 gigawatts. There's room for everything.
Yep.
And secondly, from a price perspective, is it comparable? And, if you're building it in China, it'd be $112 a megawatt. If you're building it in Australia, people say it's going to be about $160 a megawatt. But we need to think that wholesale is about 30% of what customers are paying at the moment. And certainly nothing's going to push prices down.
Fascinating stuff, Matt. Thanks for joining us. Matt Rennie there from Rennie Advisory, joining us live from Brisbane.